All right, now on Campbell's comments. Firstly, rapt to be able to catch up with David Brick, or Bricky as he's more affectionately known. Hello, mate.
G'day, Cambo. Good to catch up.
Lovely weather outside there in Queensland. Has it, in all seriousness, actually, has it stopped raining lately for some of the big
Well,
races this weekend?
it had stopped raining for about 3 or 4 days, and today there's a bit more rain today, and tomorrow apparently going to get 25 or 30 mil, which is a small drop up here compared to what we've had the last 3 months. But yeah, it's wet underfoot, that's for sure. But anyway, we're soldiering on, which is great from a racing point of view.
Definitely not what we're going to discuss today, but it must be a bit demoralising for Racing Queensland, because I know you are a small unit there, a lot smaller than Victoria and New South Wales, probably, to be getting this bad weather for their feature thoroughbred racing. It must be very demoralising for them.
Yeah, look, it is. That's part of it. It's one of the things you can't control, so you do the best you can. We've been really lucky from a harness code point of view. Particularly this last lot of rain that came through, we had really no interruption to our racing, other than some smaller fields because of scratchings and participants who couldn't train their horses due to tracks washed out. But our thoroughbreds have been continually over the last week moving race meetings a bit all over the place. It's really knocked them about. Last week, for example, the Doomben 10,000 had to be run at Eagle Farm as an example. So, yeah, look, it is. It keeps our teams on their toes. And certainly since I've been up here about 5 years, haven't seen the rain like this. A bit of an eye-opener in that regard. But, but anyway, as I said, we're pushing on, and the industry is the same, even though obviously some have been impacted by it.
Absolutely. Can give people a little bit of insight. So today I'm going to catch up with Bricky in relation to the Q Bred, how the Q Bred works, and probably the incentive for breeders, I suppose, to look at Queensland breeding, because you guys are throwing out a lot of really healthy incentives there to get people up there. And then we will actually come back and finish off with the race, your race Carnival that is coming up. I'd like to do a few more things going forward, not necessarily with you, Bricky, but a few other people, to promote what is going on as it gets a little bit closer, because I think this Carnival that you guys built last year, you showcased harness racing in just this amazing light, and I love what you guys are doing. But I just thought I'd give a little bit of an insight. There is actually a great tease of standing starts there too that we're going to cover off on. So there's a fair bit sort of to cover. Try not to cover for too long. Bricky's got a full-time job he's got to worry about as well, but we'll try and get through as much of it. But Bricky, it was actually asked of me the other day about how the Q Bred works, and the tease that a few people are being told about is being eligible for Vic Bred and Q Bred as well, and that is a distinct chance that can happen with certain breeds, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, I guess probably to give you some background, over the last 3 or 4 years, our breeding up here was trending the wrong way, as it was in a lot of states throughout Australia and New Zealand. And it got to the point where our foal crop was down to about 230 horses, and at the end of the day, we need horse population to conduct races and continue to grow that. So the Q Bred scheme was one that we, I think, had a really good base, but we really worked hard on trying to make sure that we could grow that and grow it sustainably. And it was really built on the back of our bonus scheme. There was probably a couple of key changes we made. The first key change was that we took out the age restriction. So it's basically what we call Q Bred for life. So it took away the aspect of having to get horses up to win their first bonus as a 2-year-old. And if they didn't win it, they'd lose it, and similarly as a 3-year-old. So it gives, I guess, trainers and participants a greater opportunity that, if a horse isn't quite ready, they don't have to push it just because they've got this $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 carrot in front of them from a bonus point of view. And we saw that really important from a welfare point of view as well. So just from the point of view of getting the horses to the track and pushing them early for the sake of that. But even from the point of view of some horses get injured, as we know, and they might hit the track till they're 4 or 5. And so we've seen a number of horses since then win their bonus at 8, 9, 10 years of age. And the fact that it's their first win, there's a lot of money gone into getting them to that point and racing. So that helped with our horse population, because there were some horses that came back into the pool that probably were in a paddock that people thought, oh well, it's a paddock horse, it's a lawnmower for the paddock, or it might be used for some other purpose, and it came back into the system as well. So that was probably the first real big change that we made, and that helped sort of grow our horse population. And then the other part we overlaid that with, which was feedback from industry, was about trying to make that first win bonus as big as we could. And so that's what we've been trying to do. So it sort of went to 10,000, then to 12, and now sits at 14,000. It's complemented by a second win bonus of 7.5, which horses have to win in a subsequent season. So it sort of gives some incentive to bring the horse back the next year, continue to race here, and so forth. So we don't just pay the bonus and then see the horse out of the system, I suppose. So that's probably it in a nutshell in terms of those, I guess, the main changes that we made to the scheme to really see some growth in it. The positive thing is we're seeing some really good sustainable growth. So as I said, we hit a low at about 230 from a foal crop. This year, I anticipate that's going to be up around 350 to 360, and it's sort of been growing by that sort of 10% a year for the last 3 years. So as I said, it's good sustainable growth. And we do see some opportunities, as you said, for horses, not just to be Vic bred, but also Breeders' Challenge and the like, that breeders in other states can think about the Q Bred scheme to complement their breeding for those other schemes as well.
Can I just go back a little bit? You said there that I think hats off to you too, because if you've got a horse that is an 8-year-old and finally wins its first win, that $20,000, if the person actually sat down and done the numbers, the $20,000, they'd still be a fair way behind in training fees, probably vet fees and the like. So I think hats off to you guys for that. To win your second win bonus, though, they have to win it in the next season. So say a horse like the Tax Collector, which I'll get to in a sec why I know about him, he's won his as a 2-year-old. He must win it as a 3-year-old, otherwise he doesn't get that second win bonus. Is that how it works?
No. So he can win that at any other stage. So it doesn't have to be. It just has to be in a subsequent season. He can also win other races in that current season where he's won the bonus. So that doesn't knock out the bonus, but he just doesn't get the second bonus until at least the next season ticks over. Now, if he doesn't win that bonus in the next season, he could win it 2 seasons later or 3 seasons later. So,
wow.
The majority of horses we do see, as you said, will probably likely win it, one and then win it the following year. But there's certainly plenty that also can win it, 2 or 3 years down the track. And as I said, it's really there to try and incentivise them to continue to race.
That's amazing because, like, same thing. We've seen quite a few good horses. I think it was Jillaby Nitro went up there and won the APG race and then broke down, didn't race as a 3-year-old. So he comes back as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old and wins a race. He's actually still gets that $7,000 first win bonus, as long as it's in Queensland and that. But that's what I'm saying. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where we think, and from our point of view, the majority of people that are breeding Q Breds are up here in Queensland, but there are opportunities for those interstate. And, we're happy for those people to come here and race here because that complements our horse racing population. We need horses. So that's something that we look forward to, and we get a lot, particularly we do find a lot of those trainers that we see come up here in that winter period, particularly from the Bathurst region. A lot of them are quite frequent at our sales because, they go and source these horses, they can race them in New South Wales, and then they'll bring them up here for that period and race them throughout the 3 or 4 months of winter. Trying to get their bonus, but again, as I said, it complements our racing population and helps grow that. So
then you get the added part of that is like the likes of Ricky Auctions and those guys taking a team up there through the winter months and campaigning them 2 years in a row. Now he's done it, and if he enjoys it, probably keep going. Ray Green from New Zealand, he might be flying out to there. So you're going to build something very special as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we sort of find, and as more people come up here and race, and that's one of the benefits of your Constellations Carnival, as people come to Queensland and probably for much of the year mightn't see the racing here. But when they do come here and race, then they start being a bit inquisitive about, okay, so you do it this way, you do that, speak to us about Q Bred, and they learn from that and then look at ways that they might be able to use the scheme to help their investment in the sport. And it also helps us from the point of view of we've seen a significant growth from our breeding point of view. So I think 3 or 4 years ago, the average sale price at our sales, particularly at the APG sale, was about 15 to 18,000. This year it was about 34, 35. So it's pretty much doubled or a bit more in that 3 or 4 years. And I think the fact that you've got those Q Bred incentives there is a significant part of that.
How are you eligible? How does the eligibility? How do you become a Q Bred eligible horse?
Yeah, look, there's a few different ways. The probably key ones really is number one, any mare that's bred in Queensland and foaled here, then that horse will be Q Bred. So that's the majority of our Q Breds. Then there's also the opportunity to breed to a Queensland stallion, and this is where the opportunity probably more lies for your interstate breeders, where if they can breed to a Queensland sire, that horse may be dual eligible. It may be, if it's bred in Victoria, it may meet the eligibility of the Vic Bred for whichever scheme or part of the Vic Bred scheme it's eligible. But because it's bred to a Queensland sire, it will also be eligible for the Q Bred scheme, and we allow them to be dual eligible. We know the costs that are involved in racing and getting horses there. So if those bonuses are a way of recovering a fair bit of that cost and it is an incentive for them, but we think that's good. And, importantly from our point of view, we're monitoring that and we'll continue to make sure it's sustainable, because that's one of the key aspects we get from our participants, is ensuring sustainability of the scheme.
And I think that part's really key. You're big on numbers. Does it appear to be that it is going to be sustainable at the minute?
Yeah, look, it certainly is, and don't need to go into the accountancy side of things, but that's something that we continue to forecast, and certainly this year, we're able to keep track of that down. We know the foal numbers that are coming, and so that's something we're able to keep a track of and ensure that we're reinvesting money back into that scheme. We'll continue to monitor that, work with industry as to the conditions of the scheme ongoing, but we're very mindful of one, the sustainability of it, and two, one of the key things we've also been really aim to do is try and make the scheme as simple as possible as well. It's not necessarily always that easy, but you'll note that when we do increase our bonuses, even though a horse may have paid into the scheme when the bonus was $10,000, even if the bonus has now gone up to $14,000 for that first win bonus, then that horse is eligible for that first win bonus, even though it may have been paid up and eligible for $10,000 at the time. We continue to I guess the scheme grows with that. So if a horse hasn't won its first win bonus, and by the time it does, it's a $14,000 bonus as it is this year, well, it'll get 14, it won't get 10 as it was maybe at the time it paid into the scheme. So we've sort of done that again. It's the aim is to make it as simple as possible, so people aren't sort of going, well, hang on, what was it when I paid up, and those type of things. And look, we've got a budget and model for that, but we've found that from a simplicity point of view and people understanding the scheme, so that certainly helps.
It's amazing. I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant that you can do that. So again, that gets back to that 7-year-old horse that wins its first race. That, as you said, it might have only been a $10,000 first win bonus. Probably was only one bonus too. So they're actually eligible now for $21,000 in bonuses alone.
Yeah, that's right. And that was part of our modelling. There were ways we looked at whether you did that, but I guess when we try and do it, we're trying to keep it evolving and trying to keep the horse population evolving with that. Look, some people might go, oh, well, it's the same time we paid up. That my horse won in the first year and 10,000, yet this horse hasn't won for 3 years, and yet it's getting 14,000, yet we paid up at the same time. But at the end of the day, those horses that are winning it the first year are definitely getting the benefits that they paid up for at the time. Now, if we've been able to grow the scheme and provide benefit, the reality is that horse that's probably getting $14,000, as you said before, has paid a lot more cost to get to that point in time and win that race. So, they're the swings and roundabouts in it. But we've found that by and large, the industry is really, accepting of that and understanding that, while it might mean some horses don't get paid as much, even though they paid in at the same time, everyone's getting at least the bare minimum that they paid up for at the time. And it helps us promote the scheme a lot better, and as I said again, makes it a lot more simplistic for people to understand.
I want to ask you in a sec about trotters and the growth and how it's all working, but with the growth, you're saying there before about numbers, and this is going to sound a little bit silly in a sense, 250, up to about 350, 360 now. Are you seeing a growth in breeders though, like new breeders, people inquiring in Queensland itself? Don't worry about the Victorians and New South Welshmen, but the actual Queensland people inquiring about breeding?
Yeah, we've certainly seen a growth in terms of the people. More so, I think, probably from people that are returning back and probably had mares there that maybe they thought, oh, well, things aren't going so well and decided not to breed and that. So we certainly have seen an increase in those numbers, probably more the owner breeder as well. And the other aspect we've certainly seen is also because of those sales prices going up, we're certainly seeing commercial breeders starting to grow. There weren't a hell of a lot of commercial breeders here. And look, there's still a bit of growth for that, but we certainly are seeing a lot more of those horses, people realising there's the reward if we can breed good quality, there's good incentives, and they know that they can get a good return at the sales for them to then reinvest. They're willing to do that. So some of the issues we've had with particularly Queensland sales in the past, and it's not to say that it's completely eradicated, but the buyback is sometimes seen as not so much the best thing for the sale, because people are coming up to buy the horse and they don't know whether it's for sale or not. And I know that's something that the Albion Park Club's working really hard with regard to their sale to ensure that transparency. But the fact is I think if your breeders are starting to get more money for their horses, the more likely they are to start thinking, well, I'm happy with someone else to have a go with it, because I'm going to get enough money, I can reinvest, go pay for another stallion fee, and hopefully come back to the sales again and do likewise. So
it's probably one of those things, isn't it? When you think about it, there's probably a lot of buybacks, probably because they weren't recouping their losses and nearly recouping their losses. I mean, I don't think anyone goes to a yearling sale hoping to come out 100% on top every time, but that's probably one of the issues with those buybacks.
Yeah, that's right, correct. And look, I think there are some good incentives with the Q Bred scheme, and most of those horses go into a sales-based race as well within the two sales up here. So there's some of those incentives that people probably have an expectation that they'll get a certain amount back. Otherwise, they're happy to keep the horse because they know there's an opportunity for them to recoup some of those costs. But I think as it continues to grow, and hopefully one of the aspects we've got to continue to work hard with industry on is then also growing the ownership base, because you need people to go and buy those horses, and we're seeing people from interstate come and purchase them, which is good. That helps grow the sales price for our breeders so they can reinvest. But we'd also like to see more of those horses stay in Queensland and race here on an ongoing basis. So that's part of the challenge for us and our clubs in terms of trying to grow that ownership base here in Queensland.
And I imagine that is one of the ones. The trotters was the next part I wanted to ask about, and I'll be brutally honest, it was asked of a trotting person, was asking me how it actually worked, and that's what stimulated me to give you, I suppose, a phone call and clarify it. But one, the trotters with the Q Bred, but also the growth of the trotters in Queensland, Bricky. I think it's something, I don't know if you've had a strong hand in it or if it was always a plan from Queensland Racing, but it's definitely growing and growing in the right manner.
Yeah, we probably in 2018, we sort of looked at our trotting pool, and basically our trotting pool was all imports, so whether from New Zealand or probably Victoria or some from New South Wales. And so it sort of got to a certain amount, I guess a certain base that we had, which we were able to sustain probably 3 to 4 races a week, which that was well and good. But I guess we looked at it to say, well, if we're going to grow it, how do we do that? And I think one of the main ways you can do that is by us investing in that, and then our local participants investing in that through breeding. So by offering the juvenile trotting opportunity. So that's sort of been the strategy since 2018, is starting to offer those races. And look, you take a few hits along the way. Those first couple of years of offering those 2 and 3 year old races, they're races of 2 and 3. 2 and 3 horses in a race, so, and that's certainly not something that we want to see in the future, but we understand if you're going to offer that opportunity, you've really got to accept it's a bit of a loss leader in order for participants to have the confidence that they know they can go and invest and breed, that there'll be races for those horses to go in. So that's been a gradual process, but we're certainly seeing, and I think with the other thing we did this year with regard to the trotters is we work with industry, and we had a chat with them about how do we better educate the trotters and what can we do for industry. So I think so far we've already seen almost 8 to 9 2-year-old trotters at the trials. We also did some educational stand starts for them as well. So our 2-year-old trotting season starts in about a month, and that sort of goes through until October. But I think we'll certainly start to see an increase in numbers for the 2-year-olds this year going forward. It's amazing at the sales this year. There was a trotter bought in Queensland by Queensland Interest that went for $95,000. Like, that's, if you probably had said that, as I said, in 2018, when we sort of started the journey, you would have been going, well, it's got rocks in your head. But anyway, that happened, and we're keen to support it. We think it's an important part of the industry. As I said, if we're going to be able to continue to grow and increase the number of trotting races we have, and potentially take opportunities around internationalisation going forward, we had to continue to grow that. So it's a fair journey down the road, but we've seen what New South Wales have done, and we can see the volume of horses in there, and clearly what's happening in Victoria, and we want to be part of it.
You guys must have been so proud, and when I say you guys, Racing Queensland, to see that happen. A Queensland purchased horse for 95,000 trotter. It's a sign of confidence, isn't it, that you're on the right track?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely, and I think the average price that obviously helped bump it up a bit. I think there were 12, maybe 11 trotters that went through the ring at the sale this year. I think 9 of them sold, and the average price was about 20 to 25,000. Now, admittedly, the $95,000 sale is going to help bump that up, but still, it's that again, the fact that we've got that volume of horses going through there, and that's the average price, certainly shows that things are going the right direction, and there's people that are interested in the trotting gate. So, and look, we've certainly, we know that that's the case because we've seen that, particularly in Victoria.
There is a large contingent of trotting sires in Queensland now. It's Trotters Australia, Harassed Trotters. There's a couple others up there as well whose name escapes me at the minute. That must be a little bit, I suppose, heartwarming for you guys as well, that people have seen it, the studmasters have seen it and are aware of it.
Yeah, so one thing we also did with the trotters, and this is probably in terms of the eligibility, that we did make a bit of a change specifically around the trotters, and it's probably not to say that it'll be in forever and a day, but from a pacing stallion point of view, the horse has to be standing here physically in Queensland in order for its progeny in other states to be eligible. We did make a change to allow frozen semen trotters to do that, because we didn't have any trotting stallions physically standing here. And again, that was part of the strategy of saying, well, how do we grow our base? How do we grow more horses to come and race and 2-year-old trotters to race here? And so that was one thing that was discussed with industry, is that, if studs want to register the frozen semen within Queensland, that for the period of time, it's still ongoing at the moment, we would allow that. Now, as I said, I think if we do start seeing trotters physically standing here, we'd sort of look at mirroring that up with our pacing eligibility. But in that first instance of trying to grow the trotting gate here, that was seen as a measure of being able to do that. So there could be some horses that are bred interstate, would be eligible for Q Bred, and therefore hopefully then come up here. Well, have to come up here and race for those bonuses, or those Q Bred feature races we offer.
I do know, like, I mix with a lot of people, and I know that there are quite a couple of, there's more than one state, I can promise you that much, looking at potentially having stallions based up there. So it's definitely working. People are aware that it's a great avenue, so not just the frozens, but also the other potentially have a couple of stallions standing up there, which has got to be so good for the racing community up there to have trotting stallions domiciled in that state.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's good for it's a good story for us. At the end of the day, like it or not, we are heavily connected with government, so we've got to continue to show the economic benefit of our industry, and the breeding sector is one of those important aspects. So if we're able to grow the stallions here, and the people that obviously have to work and take staff to look after stallions and do the work, whether that be to enable for chilled semen to be transported around Australia, there's definite benefits in that for the Queensland economy, and so they'll be the continual messages that we'll continue to push through government about the benefit of Q Bred, and the fact that we need to continue to invest in it, because it does bring money back into the state, not just into harness racing, but into other areas, whether it be vets and food suppliers and the supply chain that help look after these important animals that are so important to the industry.
If anyone there from the government is listening to this, from the Queensland government, it's definitely working because you're making waves down here in Victoria. So I think that's always a good sign when people are talking about it and asking me, and hence the reason I wanted to do this chat. I think it's a great sign that something's working.
Yeah, and look, we do know of some breeders that have sent horses up to Queensland to be domiciled up here and go and be bred here. So which is good, and it's it's a great place for I think horses to come. I think even some people talk about seeing their horses up here, and a number of thoroughbred trainers do just during the winter, because of the better climate, and it's a nice place for horses to be spelled and or raced. But as I said, I know there's a number of thoroughbred participants that do send their horses up here purely because of the seasonal weather. So there's a lot of benefits that from a Queensland point of view we think we can offer.
Just quickly, the trotters are eligible for the same.
Yeah, that's right, for the same bonus, and that was probably the other aspect around extending because we did have that. One of the bits of feedback we'd get from industry is that at that time that if we were going to invest in Q Bred and invest in trotting, that the current 2 and 3 year old eligibility requirements, for trotters, if all of a sudden, you're talking about trying to push horses to get to the races, it's probably another level with regard to trotters. So as you know, by expanding that again, it takes away a bit of the need to rush to get them to the track. So that was, I guess, another reason why we invested in Q Bred for life.
Outstanding, Ricky. I reckon everyone behind the Q Bred and how you guys have done it, I think it's outstanding. And the more I hear of it, and just this conversation with you, I knew I was across quite a bit of it, but even a few of the things there you said to me, I always just thought it was just a second win bonus. So a horse like the tax collector, he's won 2. So one of those, he wins his $14,000 bonus. The next one, he wins his 7. But no, that's not the case. He's got to come back next season or the season after or any season after that and win another race to get that $7,000 bonus.
Yeah, and one thing we've seen from some of our Queensland, well, not just Queensland owners, but people that race horses here have been quite savvy with it. So there were many people scrolling through results and spreadsheets and all different type of things, trying to find Q Breds that might have been, 8-year-old, and may have been paid up for the Q Bred scheme and never got their bonus, and all of a sudden they were eligible. So there were a few of those. I know Brittany Graham sourced one. I can't remember the horse's name off the top of my head, but she was lucky enough to get the first win bonus with it. I think it was about a 10-year-old. So, yeah, there were quite some savvy people out there. But, as I said again, that means those horses come here and race. They don't necessarily win their bonus first up, So, the more horses we can have racing here, the better. That adds to our wagering and what we can invest back into the industry.
Smart work from Brittany Graham, and that part that's a positive that people are taking that time. And Brittany Graham, obviously, she does a lot on Sky Channel, but she does a lot for Queensland Racing. Full stop. She posts every winner she gets, and the like, and also the trotter as well. So I think she does a great job with everything she is doing behind the scenes. So she does a terrific job there. The Q Bred Breeders' Classic is on this weekend, and I keep saying about the tax collector. Anyone wants to know, my wife and I, along with David and Wendy Boydell, we actually bred duty free and raced her for a short period of time. But it's so good to see, I'll say at a lower bred horse, like his boy Got to Go Collect, performing on the big stage as well. It's what breeding is all about, and I absolutely love it. And I think well done to you guys. But these 2 races on this weekend, terrific prize money and a full complement of horses. So you must be really proud of it.
Yeah, well, we received feedback from industry last year in regards to the positioning of our Q Bred triads, our main races, particularly the 3-year-olds over in May, and that they were a bit early. And I guess with the change of season, we then reviewed that and said we've pushed them back into the end of August and brought them together with the 2-year-olds to make it what we'll be terming the Q Stars Night and making it a celebration of Q Bred, a bit like Vic Bred's done and similar with Breeders' Challenge. But as a result of that, we still wanted to provide some opportunities for those horses, early in the season. So hence those Breeders' Classic races. My understanding is they were sort of races around 2017, and then there were some changes made. So we've brought them back in, placed them there, and it provides that opportunity for, as you said, those horses and some good, strong races. But on the other side of it is it provides some opportunities for other horses, because there'll be some that only have their eye or are starting to look at those triads and have decided to give these races a miss. And so it provides more opportunity, I think, for more horses. We also have put some other Q Bred races on in November, about the same prize money. So again, the likelihood of a horse being up for all three of those is probably somewhat unlikely. So it does help then, while those triads are the main races and the ones that I think the better horses I think we'll be certainly targeting, it does help provide opportunities for other Q Breds. And, there's plenty of good quality Q Breds around.
So these races are similar to the homegrown we have down here in Victoria, where you've got to be a Vic bred horse to be eligible for them. But our homegrown has a limitation on how much stake money. I think it's gone up now to 14,000. What used to be 10. There's no limitation on this. If you're up and about, you can race in them.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I guess that's part of, some of what we've seen growth in the Vic Bred scheme, and I think the Breeders' Challenge scheme, in terms of the different race series. And I think there'll be things that maybe potentially we look at down the track. As I said, when we've got foal crops of 230 or so, you pretty much take as whichever horses you can get that are actually able to get in there, because if you start segregating them too much, you end up with probably, particularly for 2-year-olds, if there's not enough up and ready, you end up with races of maybe 5, 6 or 7 horses in them. But so hence, at the moment, they are open to pretty much whoever's up and ready and able to race. But, it's not to say that down the track, we might look at adding some other races, later in the season, that might be for horses that haven't been able to get up for those other races, or, as you said, might be conditioned on stakes earns or whatever. As our foal crop grows, and we want to provide more opportunity for more of our horses. So, there's some good blueprints out there, as I said, in Victoria and New South Wales, as to how that's been done. And so that'll be where I'm sure we'll look as it sort of grows, and hopefully our crop continues to grow.
The Queensland Racing Carnival last year really burst onto the scene, and I think hats off to you guys. I reckon it was just sensational. Captured possibly a little bit because of COVID, because people couldn't move around as much, which we've seen. But it's all good and well to say COVID made it possible. You've got to be able to capitalise, and you guys up there really, really capitalised on it last year. Really put on an enormous show of harness racing, and I think hats off to you guys. How's it looking this year?
Yeah, look, last year, as you said, I think there was certainly a bit of right place, right time, I think, in that regard. And there were probably, particularly the New Zealanders hadn't been able to get out, and there were, people were sort of, it's probably a bit harder for the Victorians. I think some of the New South Wales participants were able to get here. But certainly this year, obviously, far more open. And it's, building together like another really good carnival. One thing that we've really tried to do, and will continue to try and do, is we think it's a really good opportunity to make this the best harness racing carnival in Australia, just purely because of where it's positioned. We know people in southern states, and previously the southerner, I know what it's like in the middle of winter. And so the opportunity to come up for a week or two and, get a bit of sun, is an opportunity we see. So we're rolling out with the clubs a few more social opportunities off the track as well. So when people come up, there's some things to do, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward, just to help make it that carnival atmosphere, where people come and they can socialise and enjoy each other's company. But there'll obviously be some good quality racing on the track, and we saw that last year. And look, the rising sun this year. For sure, it would have been great to have Bondi locked down here. Horses like Catch a Wave. But the reality is, at any one time, it's difficult to get every horse here. But the fact that, this stage we're going to have, the horse that ran third in the Miracle Mile and won the Chariots, probably got the best mare in Australia that we've probably seen for some time. And a couple of really good 3-year-olds we think will be in the field as well. Today we invited Rip. He's, I think, 6 of 7, won 2 Group 1s. So we're really pleased that he's coming up for the carnival. And we'll be announcing another 3-year-old the next week. And there'll be other horses that'll be nominated for the race. And I've seen a number of them out there that are putting their hand up to go in that rising sun, which will make it'll be a cracking race. So it's a really good start to that Albion Park part of the carnival. notwithstanding the fact that Redcliffe's before that and a really important part of it. And then obviously it rolls through to the Blacks of Fake, our Grand Circuit race, again, which, it's not going to have King of Swing like it had last year, but, it's always going to be horses that step up. And, a horse like Majestic Cruiser, who we saw perform so well in New Zealand, he's on his way here. So, and obviously with horses such as Triple Eight, and I'm sure there'll be some locals as well that'll certainly be well in the mix.
You mentioned a lot of great names there, and it's terrific. I'm not going to hold you much longer, Bricky, but you said there before about the Redcliffe Carnival, and I can remember back years and years ago, Larry Eastman, I think it was Jonathan, he targeted it anyway, being a standing start race, and he was that keen to, just excuse me, sorry about that, this standing start race, because Queenslanders back then didn't have a lot of true standing start horses. With Redcliffe on the radar now, you guys have done something very, very different in your approach to the standing start races.
Yeah, well, so our stand starts, while we had programmed in the past, we found that we had a couple of features there, but we decided we really needed to, in conjunction with industry, following their feedback, trying to create a bit of a stand start season. And so we've done that. We've started rolling it out this year. And we think it's an opportunity in future for our trainers or owners interstate to target those races. So it was going for about 10 weeks this year, culminates in the Redcliffe Cup, $100,000 race this year. And there's a couple of other features such as the flashing red on the road there to that race. But, we think it's something, it provides another type of horse an opportunity. It's probably a bit of a lure for some horses that might go there and go, well, I've got the Redcliffe Cup if I can be a stand horse, and I've also got Sunshine Sprint and your Blacks are Fake. So it provides a few different opportunities for those horses, and ones that maybe thought, look, I'm going to go up against such and such. Don't know if I'll bother about going up. But if they know there's some different opportunities, such as a stand, then that might be the carrot that brings them along, and then they stay around for the next month and go around in some of those big ones at Albion.
And you never know what comes out of a lot of those races. You say about Bondi Lockdown, he pretty much burst onto the scene through your Queensland Derby last year. Yeah. He may have gone up there because Dunny had a good standing start horse because of that. Because the prize money's nothing to be sneezed at, and I apologise for my sneeze just there before. There's a $21,000 stand at Albion Park next weekend, not this one coming, the one after, that goes into a $33,000 flashing red standing start. I mean, these are good prize money races for people to throw a horse on the float and make the trip, and then take I suppose, their throw at the stumps, if you like, their Derby horse or their Oaks filly that they think is good enough, but other people may not.
No, that's right, and that's why we do. We concentrate very heavily on this time of the year to provide as many opportunities as we can for as many horses, because we think that's our niche, that's our opportunity to take the limelight nationally, and so, as you said, it gives participants an opportunity. And we know there's a number of participants that like coming up here for 2 or 3 weeks. As you said, if they bring 2 or 3 horses. I think Ray Green last year, he was just going to bring copy that. And then all of a sudden there were a few others, and he goes, I was coming for a work and holidays. It's been all work now, because I think he brought Tommy Lincoln, and there are a couple of others that he brought over. But, I think that's the aim that we want. Obviously, we want as many of those races to stay in Queensland. We'd love to see Queensland owners and Queensland trainers win them. But, we're realists as well that, we need the national spotlight to grow our wagering, and not just on that carnival, but throughout the year. So, it's a really important time of the year for the industry here, because it sets us up for the rest of the season and the year.
I totally agree, and especially with that last part. I mean, as a Victorian, you'd want to see Victorians only win races and the likes. The product doesn't grow. I mean, it gets stagnant. It's probably one of those things that probably happened to Queensland racing a little bit there back in the day, because I can remember back in the halcyon days, everyone wanted to go to Albion Park. It was the fastest track. It was the best track, and it just sort of plateaued out, if you like. Now it's back on that radar, and it's just, I think it's enormous, the stepping stones you guys are taking, and I'm sure you've got a grand plan. I don't think you're well and truly at that stage just yet, but I think what you're doing is just enormous. But you definitely need the interstaters, overseas horses. Wouldn't it be nice in a couple of years if you got a horse from America to come down, like a 2 or 3 year old horse to come down from America and compete?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, they're the things you just got to continue to look at for how do you do that. We've really tried to build ourselves. We know there's, as I said, there's sort of niches for us. Um, New South Wales and Victoria are far broader in terms of their coverage across the state and volume, which is great. But we've really tried to identify some areas around, yes, carnival time in that winter period, trying to make ourselves really innovative and look at ways we can do things differently, try things. Not everything's going to work, but it's been a real aim. And I guess it probably goes across all three codes up here because, New South Wales and Victoria and the other two codes are similarly strong. But, we think we're a state that can certainly, play on that main stage and provide opportunities for the best horses and the best participants. So we'll continue to try and do that. And, it's a healthy competition, I think, between the states, but ultimately, we do also want to grow the code. So we've got it's important nationally to do that, and there's a responsibility for us to do that nationally.
Ricky, thank you very much. Could talk to you forever. Probably got a little bit heavy for some people there at stages, but I wanted to get those points across, especially with the prize money, the eligibility, and your goals. And I think, I really appreciate you giving me some time. And, it's gone for a little while, but it's the sort of thing I imagine participants can go back and watch over a couple of times and get an understanding of how you guys are going. But I said it a couple of times, I think hats off to you guys in Queensland, what you are doing, because you're really starting to grow, and that's key for harness racing. It doesn't matter what state it is, the industry needs to grow and grow strong. And what you guys in Queensland did last year, and by the sounds building to this year, I think is tremendous.
No problem. Appreciate the time, Paul. And as I said, if anyone's got any queries about any of the Carnival or Q Bred, then myself or any of our racing team will happily have a discussion anytime. So appreciate the opportunity.
I don't have a banner up there. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Just through emails and that, Bricky, or?
Yeah, probably if they duck to the racingqueensland.com.au website, they can, if people want to get in touch with us, phone numbers there, or there's an info at Racing Queensland email, pop it on there and it'll come through to our department and we'll go from there.
No, thank you very much, mate.
No problem at all.